Okay, good morning. It's 10:03 a.m. on Sunday, and we are in the back parking lot of Holden again. And I just got done having a cup of coffee at the Chardon Buckeye Cafe. Chardon chocolate. Well, yeah, can never quite get the name right. And I thought that we would just Chardon Chocolate Buckeye Cafe, just to set the record straight. So as you can see, it is not a sunny day right now. I was hoping it would be. There's a hint of blue sky here and there, but it is mostly overcast and white and gray. But it is cool. It is breezy, and the sounds of summer are out. And it looks like this particular trail is actually mowed, which a lot of times it isn't. And so I'm going to go this way today, which is I don't think we've been on this trail. It just winds through the trees and around to the side, sort of parallel to the other trail, but goes through the field. Yeah, it has kind of a more natural feel to it, because it cuts through the fields a little more. And I think this is a recent addition to their trail system. So it's still being formalized. Like, I remember this trail actually was much narrower before, so now they're mowing it a little wider here to make it easier to follow, which is nice. So yeah, not a sunny day, but still a day. And the sounds, as I'm reviewing some of my videos, I just review them just to make sure. Well, sometimes I like kind of looking over even what comes about, during the talks, because I'm just as surprised as anyone where the conversation goes. But when I'm listening to the videos, the thing that stands out to me more than what I'm saying, more than anything, are the sounds. I hear all the insects chittering away, just like now. It comes out very clearly in the videos, and I'm just sort of glad that, like, if nothing else, when winter comes, I'll be popping these videos out and playing them on the coldest days to remind myself of what summer is like. And this is summer. Even a day like today when the sky isn't necessarily blue, and this feels kind of like a fall day, kind of trying to penetrate. Oh, there's some blue sky over there. Oh, look at that. The other side, there's blue sky. Maybe it's moved. I think it's actually moving this way too, so we might get some blue sky after all. And I'm feeling the sun peeking out a little bit more there, so everything changes, right? Nothing stays the same for very long. But even on a day like today, with fall around the corner, and we start to get hints of fall coming in. This is now the second half of August, so it's getting a little cooler, but now that I'm feeling the heat now of the sun, as there's a break in the clouds, and just that solar radiation, right, just immediately starts warming my skin and reminding me, it's telling me, don't rush it here. Fall's not that close. We're still knee deep in summer. Middle of August is, June, July, and August here in this part of the world are sort of the summer months, and things start cooling down in September, and then we transition into fall. It's a ways away, and I'm just happy, like, every day. Like, I don't care what it is, what season it is, just coming out in this, and looking at just paying attention to all these plants, that won't be here. Some not even in the fall, definitely not in the winter. Everything dries up. And we've talked about it before, a different kind of beauty, a stark beauty, but like right now, it's just full of life. Every kind, just all harmoniously coexisting. That's what I find really fascinating here, just all harmoniously coexisting. There's no problem with these yellow flowers being next to the white flowers, next to the grass, and they're all very happily intertwined. But talking about it is one thing. Just being out here walking through it is another. And oh, there's a nice little feather up here. The things you see when you're just paying attention. You can see that right there. Just turn it around a little. Oh, hopefully you can see that. Sundays are always an interesting day. It's the end of the weekend. The weekend's coming to a close, but it's not over yet. And we have another full day here of whatever this day brings. And I intend to savor every moment of it. And it always starts with a walk. And as long as I can today, I just want to be outside, taking in every moment, of what's going on. Right, and it's to just see what's happening now without the burden of the past on your mind, right, is what it's all about. And otherwise you miss what's happening. It's just funny how so often we live in the past and we just miss everything. But we're so concerned about dying, right? But we're not even living. And I always find that kind of fascinating, right? That we dwell on, we worry, we think about the past, which can lead to anxiety or depression or any other number of, named conditions, or just ordinary life. I'm not sure how far ordinary life is from all that. I mean, our day-to-day life is just a preoccupation with the past, with what's happening, what has happened. And all the while, not really paying attention to what's happening right now. So are we ever really alive? That's the question we should always ask ourselves, rather than, what happens after we die, is what happens while we're alive? And what is happening now? And do we even know we're alive? We talked about that before. And I think there's this general awareness, right, that we're living, but are we truly living? Like, are we living to the fullest of our potential in every moment? And I would say that requires us to just be aware of this moment, because there is no living outside of this moment. Like, there is nothing. We've talked about this before, and it naturally flows, right, as we're talking about all of this, and what is life and what is living. And to me, this is living. Being out here like this, there's nothing I want more than this. I'm not attracted by fancy cars or fancy anything human made. Really just doesn't appeal to me. Like, this is where it's at. And to me, just simple living, being in contact with nature all the time, seeing its wondrous beauties, and just sensing that feeling of being alive. Just like every other plant out here that's reaching up towards the sky and taking in the sunlight and the heat that I'm feeling. They may not feel it the same way that I feel it, but that energy from the sun is their life, right? Their food. Everything green is creating energy from the sun. Do we even stop to think about that, for just a brief moment? That the sun is like feeding everything. It's keeping all this alive. If we didn't have the sun, none of this would be here. Right? That thing in the sky that's bright and warm, that we gloss over every day, is like the source of all our life. It's easy to see how ancient peoples would have worshipped the sun, given that it provides everything. And they probably didn't even fully understand the extent that it does. We now understand chlorophyll and how plants absorb their energy from the sun, and that is sort of the basis of all life on Earth, right? That plants grow, is like the key to everything. Animals that eat plants and then are eaten by other animals, like that chain of life, all starts from the energy we get from the sun. The sun, we're not there, right? All life on Earth within a very short period of time would just simply vanish. And so it constantly supplies us with that energy. Are we aware of that? The importance of it. And it won't be there forever. I mean, it'll be there for a long time, but it's also guaranteed to run out of fuel. At some point in time, the sun will not be there. We think of that as infinitely far ahead in the future because it's, millions of years, hundreds of millions of years. I don't even know, billions. Not really sure how long. But it's only got so much, right? I mean, it's running off of fuel that when it's consumed, end of story. But that's so far in the future. And again, see how we think, instead of just thinking of what's here now, even I start thinking about the future and, the sun, and, I start like going off into thought related to what I'm seeing. But instead of just seeing what I'm seeing for what it is right now and not paying attention close enough, there's bees on these plants that are buzzing around, bumblebees mostly from what I can tell. And they're just, picking off whatever they can while these plants are still here, still very much in full bloom, still very much alive. And here we are on this wonderful day, not worrying about yesterday or tomorrow, but just today. We're here now. I say that a lot, and I realize that coincides with Ram Dass's blue book, right? Be Here Now, which I have a copy of. I have gone through that. And at that particular moment in time, that really meant something. And it's those sorts of words are not truth themselves, but it's an echo of truth for sure. I mean, we keep saying it all the time, or it keeps coming up. Be here now. And that phrase, if you pick it apart, right, and start going into that and saying, what does that mean, right? Because those words could mean anything, but what does that mean? And what does it mean to be here? Of course I'm here. Where else could I be? Right? Like they say, no matter where you go, there you are. So that would seem redundant. And then you would say now, well, of course I'm in the now. Like, how am I not in the now? So I think when you look at a phrase like that, it's important to say, how are we not already doing that? Not being here, not being now. What's causing us to not be here now? Well, I mean, I guess let's go into it. I mean, we've gone down this path. This has popped into my head, and now we can examine it. And I don't think it's going to be anything terribly different from what we've said before, but it just shows sort of all roads lead to the truth, right? Like if you just start going into anything, the truth emerges from that, because the truth is behind everything, right? There's nothing that isn't true except for the imaginings of our mind. So what does it mean to be here? Well, what does it mean to be not here? Well, to be not here means to be lost in your thoughts, right? To be thinking about like what happened yesterday, today, or right now all this is in front of me, instead of seeing what's in front of me and sensing it, being sensitive with all the senses open and aware to what's happening now as I'm walking through this now slightly shaded part of the trail, still seeing the sun off there to the left and seeing the dappled sunlight, through the trees and the breeze. These are all the things I would miss if I was not paying attention to what's happening now. The feel of the ground under my feet and the stones, on the path, the gravel gives it kind of a rocky feel that I can feel even through my boots. And, I hear the sound of the crunching, in addition to the sound of the insects, which are just always there, like this background. It's like the background music of summer, that if you weren't paying attention, maybe you wouldn't even realize that's happening. All the sounds of the insects that are just happily living, just existing in this environment. They're not worried about yesterday or today or tomorrow. They're just here now, right? They're existing. But if we get lost in our thoughts, it's the thoughts that derail us from the here. And by the way, from the now. So if you say, how are we not here and now? It's because we get lost in our thoughts. It's almost that simple, right? And then what does it mean to be lost in our thoughts? Right? Because again, it's just words. But, that's why it doesn't matter what I'm saying. I'm looking at how I get lost in thoughts. And it's when I start thinking about, okay, so I might think it's Sunday and I have to go back to work tomorrow, and I may not be looking forward to that. And so I may be dreading that, right? And so now I'm I'm just projecting, tomorrow into now, and instead of being here, I'm thinking about tomorrow and what tomorrow's going to be, and maybe it's not going to be as great as today, because maybe I won't be out walking a large portion of the day as I am now, that's the way it'll be, right? So I can project into the future and say, well, I kind of know what tomorrow is going to be, and it's not going to be quite like today, and I'm going to miss. But here's the thing. But if I'm not paying attention to what's happening now, why am I worried about tomorrow? Then I'm not even here now. So even on a Sunday when I could be here, immersed in all this glory, I'm not, because my mind is in tomorrow, worried about tomorrow. So you see how that's how we're not living now. Right? And so then what's the point? So it's just funny how we waste so much time thinking along those lines. For what purpose? What purpose does it serve to think about tomorrow before tomorrow's here? To even think about tomorrow. What difference does it make? This is today, and we always tend to do that, though. Like, in this moment, we think about another moment. Either one that has passed or one that has yet to come, instead of being here in this moment. And then we worry about dying, not living. Right? That's some of the thoughts that we also have. But you're not living now. You're not even living. And maybe if you actually understood how to live now, you wouldn't even be so worried about death or the ending of this. Because in that moment of living may be all of eternity. Right? Time may come to an end. Because time is how we perceive it. Our thought is what brings about the idea of time. Without it, what would it be? And it's a question not only to ask, but to go into yourself. What is it that I think time is? Not what people tell you. This is where you have to get out of all this. Your first reaction to that is, well, I know what time is. I was taught it in school, and I know equations that involve time. It's like, okay, that's all your ideas about time. It's not how you experience time. It's not how you see yourself in time. None of the equations can explain how you perceive time. And are you aware of that? That has nothing to do with math or physics or anything else. So set aside all those concepts of time that we've come to learn about. Right? How is that really time anyways? It's just ideas about time. What is actual time? And how you experience time? And how do you think about time? And if you had no thoughts about the past and the future, would there even be time? Now again, ideas. That's not going to help us. Just using words. But it's pointing something out, and even in that process of talking about time, we're getting lost in ideas about time, rather than trying to understand what time is as we are here experiencing it, right in this moment. And it's so important to see the difference of these things. They're not the same, you know. And usually if I talk to people, or even myself sometimes, about this stuff, it just ends up being an intellectual debate, right? Which is pointless. Who debates facts? There's no debating facts. If you're debating, it means you're not paying attention. Because if you're paying attention to what's actually happening, there's no debate, right? Because if you and I are here together, and we're both paying attention to what's happening, there's nothing to debate. What is there to debate? We're both feeling the sun. We're both seeing the same sky. We're both seeing the same field. We may then let different thoughts take over, right? Your thought process would be different than my thought process. What happens to these facts after we observe them is different. I have my opinions about it. You have your opinions about it. Your thoughts may be taking you in different directions than my thoughts. That's what's different. Not what's here now. That's the same. If we both observed in this moment with the same intensity, the same silence, the same not becoming distracted from any thought, the same truth, we would both see the same truth, right? We would not see two different things. And this is why when people are debating and arguing, it's because they're not seeing truth. Because truth has no debate, has no argument. It is simply what is. What is not, you don't argue about what is. What is what is. So this is what's important. See the things that, if you're arguing about something, then you've already derailed yourself from truth, and it's not worth continuing. You're now just floating around in a world of ideas, and those ideas can take you anywhere. We're so used to this, though. This is our problem. We're just so used to that mode, right? Debate class. We have debate class. We should have truth class, right? Which is not debate. There'd be no talking at all. You know, it would just be going out into nature silently and observing what's there, because that is the truth. And then observing that when thought comes into play, that is not truth. We have now deviated from truth. And that's the important thing, is, so people may say, okay, well, I don't know how to stop it. I do this all the time. How am I supposed to stop thought? You don't stop it. You pay attention to what's happening, including your thought. That's part of what's happening, right? Part of what's happening is your thinking, right? This is where, like, there's no way, when you're observing, there's no trick. You know, there's no, well, I can only observe up to a point, and then my thoughts come into play. Then observe those thoughts, because that also is what's happening. See, and if you're observing everything, including the hindrances, including the distractions, including the things we're talking about that takes us away from truth. But in a way, we start wrapping that up into truth. That's part of truth as well. That you are thinking right now is true. That's also a truth that only you can see, right? No one can see your thoughts. You can see what's happening and how you're taking what you're seeing and playing around with it and toying with it, and, you know, going into the past and the future. Watch how that mind goes all over the place, right? Instead of being right here, right? And this is what we talked about. That's how you're not being here now. So how do you be here now? By watching how you're not being here now. It's that simple. Nothing else to do. Nothing to practice. No mantras to repeat. No beliefs. There's no beliefs in watching. How do beliefs arise in watching? There's no beliefs. And as I said before, if we came out here, two of us, and we were looking at the same field, the same tree, and if we both saw the same truth, there's no disagreement, right? But it involves not words, not arguments, not thought, but just seeing. We both see the same thing. Now, if I started describing the tree, my description may be different from your description. Now, that's not truth. We've just departed from truth, right? My description of that tree is not the tree. My description of that tree will be different from your description of that tree, which will be different from everyone's description. Do you see how we get lost? Because then we take those descriptions to be truth, which are not. They are not. And then we get confused, because then it's like, well, my version of that tree is different from your version. I'm confused. Where's the truth? The truth lies nowhere in those words. The truth is never in the description, only in the described, which can only be observed directly. So the observation of the tree without words is true. The minute we try to verbalize it, we have departed from truth. So there's a silence in truth, right? Truth has a silence. It can't be verbalized and vocalized. So the minute we do that, we stray away from truth. And this is why Lao Tzu, when he asked one of his students to accompany him, and I mentioned this before, which he did. He asked the student to come, also asked the students not to speak, spoke anyways, and then that was the last time that student ever went with Lao Tzu, because his whole point he was trying to make, right, was that you only see the sunset when you're not speaking about the sunset, when you're not thinking about the sunset even. It doesn't have to be words you speak out loud. We think in our head too. We speak in our head, right? The thoughts, you can talk to yourself, right? You can talk silently. That's still talking, because those thoughts are still there. And the thoughts about the sunset, then you miss the sunset, the actual sunset, which is none of what you can verbalize. So this whole thought process, verbalization process, is what takes us away from what's true. What's true is silent awareness, right? When you're silently aware and observing, that is truth right there. The minute you think about it, you're away from truth. But see, that thinking is part of what's happening, right? That thinking is occurring in the brain. So to see that is also to see truth. So even seeing where you're not here and you're not now is a way of returning to the here and now, because you're just seeing even what the brain is doing in this moment. And in the seeing, maybe it'll quiet down, right? Because it's kind of like an interesting little feedback loop or something that, no matter how far off the rails the brain gets, you can always watch what the brain is doing. And in the watching of that, say, hey, I realize you're missing the truth because you're getting caught up in all these words, which is another form of truth, right? The words themselves are real. I mean, the vocalizations that I'm creating right now that are emanating out here into the wild, which no one other than the camcorder is receiving, as far as I know, unless there's someone hiding behind the trees. I mean, it's GoPro, I should have said, not camcorder. I mean, it's being recorded. But other than that, it's just sound waves, emanating out here, mixing in with the sounds of everything else. There is a truth to that, right? That is occurring. But in seeing it what it is, right? And it's just sound waves, right? It's just sound. And not the ideas behind it. And even those ideas, right, are formed in the brain, which are also electrochemical signals. And, we don't have to get into all that, but just seeing that whole process, right? And this thing, when we talk about being in the present, it's not about shunning the past. It's not about cutting off your memories or saying, well, I can't remember anything then. It's to see that when you are looking at the past, that you are looking at the past. Just to see that. That is also what's happening in the present. Right? If you're recalling memories, that is still occurring in the now. That recollection of memories is a current happening. Right? So you're not going outside the bounds of now by saying, I have a memory or I'm thinking about something. That also is happening right now. So see that that's happening as well. That the mind is recalling things. There's memory. And it's then nothing can escape. Right? Nothing can escape that attention when attention is also aware of all the distractions that are going on. Not fighting them. Not trying to be quiet. Not trying to be silent. Not trying to not remember something. No, just pay attention to the remembering. Pay attention to the distractions. Pay attention to the hindrances. See them for what they are. And in the seeing, then it all just falls into place, right? It's not like something that we don't want to happen, because the minute we don't want it to happen, that's just more thought saying, oh, I wish I was silent right now, right? I wish I would just stop chattering. I'm chattering right now, but I'm seeing that I'm chattering, right? I'm seeing that I'm chattering about not chattering, and I'm seeing the blue sky and the green fields along with seeing what my brain is doing, what this brain is doing, not my brain. My brain, again, this is where we always go wrong as well, because we think it's a possession of what? Who's the my that possesses the brain? And again, so when you say something like my brain, you may just say it not thinking or not being aware of what you're saying, right? But go into that. What does that mean, my brain? Because when I say my brain, there's an implication that there's some me outside of my brain, right? Because if I was in the brain, if I was the brain, then how does the brain own itself? See, what's interesting is that's so absurd, but it's what we say all the time. My brain, my mind. You've separated yourself from that brain and from that mind by saying that, right? But we don't even think, we're not aware of that. We're not aware of how we separate ourselves from what's happening, when instead, but what's interesting is just by saying it now, I said it, but I also was aware I was saying it. Then I'm aware of what that means. I'm aware of the brain and how it even constructed that phrase and the illusion that's behind it, that's still there in the brain, right? It doesn't want to give this up. This idea of me and my is a very important idea in the brain. See that as well. It's not like you just one day say, well, I'm going to just not be me anymore. That's equivalent to death. The ending of the me is the same as death. So we're playing around with death, right? When we say things like, examine why you say my brain, and then will the truth be revealed? Well, the me does not want to give that up any more than it wants to die. We've said this before. It's not the physical death of our body that we're worried about. It's the mental death. The fact that I may not exist anymore mentally, right? We're okay with the death of the body. There's absolutely no denying the death of the body. We see that happen. We get cremated, we get buried, whatever the case may be. We see our relatives die, or whatever it is. You can't escape that. We know we can't escape physical death. That's clear, right? But we have the mind said, I'll accept that, but I will not accept it says, I will not accept the death of this idea of me. That I won't accept. It continues. I mean, just go into that. Why? Why we're okay with giving up the physical form, but we're not okay with giving up the mental form? That's what all this is about. All these religions and everything are like, yes, we know ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I mean, it's a key thing. In Christianity, there's Ash Wednesday. You go in and you get ashes marked on your forehead in the sign of the cross. And I did that when I was younger, growing up in Catholic school. I don't do that anymore because I don't practice in that tradition anymore. But what that is reminding us of is the inevitability of the end of this body. That is clear. That is not, no one's mistaking that. No one's saying, now there are people that believe the resurrection, right? That there will be a point. There are some people who believe in a physical resurrection of your body in some future time when, say, Jesus comes back to earth. There is a belief in that you will physically be reborn, right? So, I mean, even then, some people take it to physical rebirth at some future time, you know, but not everyone believes that. Even in Christianity, right? That's another idea that somebody had that is really nowhere in the Bible. It's nowhere in there, as far as I can tell. I mean, I'm not a biblical scholar, but I think these are ideas that people have come up with after the fact, later on. And even if it is in the Bible, it's words that you should investigate on your own, not take for truth. So whatever words are there, you examine it and say, okay, somebody thought that and they wrote it down. That does not make it true. Let me look in my own life, observe on my own whether that's true or not. And if you find no indication that that is true, then why do you hold on to that? Why do you hold on to an idea that you can't independently determine the veracity of? Right? Why would you do that? Shouldn't everything that you believe be independently verified? This is where faith comes in, because people will say, no, you need to have faith, which basically means stop your critical thinking and just accept what's being told you as true. I could never do that. I could never do it when I was younger. I can't do it now. I don't think that's the right way to live. I think you can be misled by that. And, you know, other religions like Hinduism and Buddhism, they encourage critical thinking. So, you know, there is this idea of faith is kind of unique to Christianity. It's kind of interesting. I grew up with the idea. So it was ingrained in me to such an extent that, you know, everyone talks about faith, and you must have faith, and you must believe in order to go to heaven. And I'm like, you're telling me this, but I'm not. Why? You know, I've always questioned. I mean, I went into science because I questioned, and I questioned the same things in religion. And not to be adversarial or to be, you know, against anything, but just, I don't understand what that means and says. Can you help me understand? And every time I would ask, it was clear to me that no one had an explanation, right? Everyone just had faith. Going back 2,000 years, you know, they had faith. They were told to have faith, and so they had faith. And what that means is they didn't challenge it. They didn't question it. Okay, so they propagated whatever belief, whatever this is, right, that they say, generation after generation after generation. And then just the longevity of it would take on a feeling of truth. Well, it's been that way for 2,000 years, so it must be true. No, it must not. I mean, certainly that isn't the case. And you can see that if you examine how easy it is to pass on a falsehood just by repeating it, right? Just keep repeating it over and over again, and then hope it becomes true. We see examples of that even in our current political climate, right? Where people can repeat falsehoods over and over until it's just like, well, I've heard it so many times, it must be true. These are just things that happen in the brain, biases that happen because of our brain and the way it's wired, that certain things like that, when repeated, have a sense of truth to them. But the way to determine if something is true, right, is to independently verify, right? It's even science. So anyone that is in science knows independent verification is key. Like, someone can make a claim over here about something. Well, that may be true, but until I can replicate the experiment, replicate the observation under the same conditions, it could be false. And what I see is, you know, I see people who are in science who understand the questioning from a scientific perspective, but then take things on faith in their religious understanding. Why that division? If you see the value of independent verification on one side, why do you not see it on the other side? Because they've been told that you don't question. They've been told that that is part of your religion, to have faith, not to question. The minute you question, you'll go to hell, right? Or some other bad thing will happen to you, so don't question it, right? These are the tricks that these institutions have come up with to keep you from questioning. But then there's those people like me and like others who say, no, I'm going to keep questioning. If I go to hell, I go to hell. You know, because I need to understand the truth. And I don't feel like taking someone's word for anything is true. It may be true. Okay, you hear something. It's something to inquire into. Okay, you've made a claim. I will investigate that claim myself in my own way, observe with my own eyes, and see if I find the same thing to be true. And what has happened over all these years is every time I investigate something like that, I don't find it to be true. Not on my own, not investigating it. And what I mean by on my own is through my own observation, right? My own sensory awareness, even my mental awareness. I just don't see any reason to believe those things. It's just stuff that has been written down, stories that people have told each other for various reasons. It has continued to propagate. And the people that have really strong so-called faith often become violent in defending that faith, right? They don't like you to even raise the possibility, like, hey, are you sure? Are you sure? And not to be mean or anything. In fact, to ask somebody, are you sure, is compassion for that person. Because if you see that somebody is caught in an illusion, in something that isn't true, you want them to see truth. You don't want them to be caught in what's not true. And you see that they're suffering because they are caught in that non-truth. And you want them to be free of that suffering. So you're not saying this, and I'm not saying this to be, I'm right and you're wrong. That's never the thing. It's just to say, how about you question that in your own way, in your own mind, honestly and freely, without fear, and go into, why do you believe the things you believe? Is it just because someone told you that? Or is it because you yourself have independently verified these things to be true? And you'll hit all sorts of walls and all sorts of you'll see, just in me raising that issue, you'll find what's going on in the mind. Like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say that? Was it fear? Fear that maybe there's some truth to what I'm saying. And if that were the case, then everything maybe you've believed fervently for 20, 30 years may turn out to not be true. You can't admit that. You don't want to admit that. That's really scary, because it's like building a house that you've built over 30 years, and then all of a sudden someone comes and tells you, all I have to do is pull this one card out of that house and the whole thing falls down. Well, no, don't pull that card. They don't want to touch that card. They recognize that it's fragile, right? It's very fragile. If you start pulling cards, asking questions, too many questions, the whole thing may fall apart. I don't want it to fall apart because it's my security, right? I live in this house of cards right now. Leave me alone. Leave me be. The problem is compassion compels to not leave people be, right? To not let people be in a state of suffering, but also not to antagonize. If people are in belief, it's like if people don't want to see truth, they will not see truth. They will continue to live in whatever non-truth they are wrapped up into. But then one day they might just say, I don't want to suffer anymore. I'm still suffering, right? All this pain I'm still having all this pain. Why is my belief not getting rid of all this pain that I have? I thought believing in something strongly enough would eliminate it. In fact, it's made it worse. Because now my belief makes me angry. Makes me hate people that don't believe what I believe. It makes me just want to hide away from those people, right? Just live in very insular communities, separated from everyone else, because I can't dare to question things. I don't want to hear anybody tell me that maybe I should question what I believe and just see truth. I don't want to see that. It's painful. I'll just live in my world, right? This is what, and again, I'm not saying this is what's happening with you, but it may be. And if you examine, all you have to do is examine yourself. Examine your reactions to what I'm saying. That's how you know. Not listen to me. You examine, and you had a reaction, right? No matter what, you had a reaction to what I said, to what I've been saying. And there's questions. Do you turn it off immediately? Because I don't want to hear any more of that, what that idiot is saying. Why? Is it because what I'm saying is wrong? You've verified that what I'm saying is wrong? Or it's because It's touching on an area that you want to leave untouched. Fear. That's what fear does, right? Fear enters the room, you know, and says, this is, I'm getting a little nervous. I'm feeling fear over what's happening here. I do not want to experience that. Let's move on to dog and cat videos. It's much more pleasant. And I love those, by the way. That's my favorite videos on YouTube. They're not philosophical. I don't listen to what anyone says. I don't, other than Judeo-Krishnamurti, which I've mentioned before. I'm not on a seeking path for truth. I am not on a knowledge-seeking path for truth. I observe, and that's all I do. And I don't need other people to tell me how to observe or what to observe, right? So in the same way, you don't need me to tell you how to observe and what to observe. All I'm saying is observe for yourself, right? But this goes back to, I can't even remember, I'm trying to unravel this now to, I think it was when I said my brain, and we started going into the me. See, what's more fundamental, even than your religious beliefs, is your belief in yourself. This is way more deep. You may change your religions, right? You may switch from one religion A to B to C. They're all letters. They're all sort of the same, different concepts and ideas, but they all rely on concepts and ideas. That's why they're the same, right? When I say all religions are the same, you may argue, well, of course not, because, you know, this religion talks about Jesus and this Muhammad and this. And it's like, do you not see, though? Those are all concepts, all ideas. And that's what I'm saying, right? That's the truth to see yourself. Once you see that all ideas come from the brain, all ideas and concepts come from the same place, memory. You're either told it by somebody else, you read it in a book, you didn't experience it yourself. You weren't alive at the time of Jesus. You weren't alive at the time of Buddha. You weren't alive at the time of Muhammad or anybody else. You had no direct experience of anything they said or did. That's true. I mean, that's what I'm willing to fall on my sword for. I mean, unless somehow you've lived, you're 2,000 years old and amazingly healthy. You did not live in the time of these people. You do not know what they said. End of discussion. We could sit and argue all day long about the veracity of the Gospels, and no, in the time of Buddha, it was all written down. It actually wasn't. It was hundreds of years after he died. Hundreds of years. So even the Buddha, we don't know exactly what he said. It was oral tradition for a very long period of time. Hinduism goes back very far. But again, it's like nobody's around. Were you around when Krishna was? You know, if you weren't, you have no direct knowledge of any of it. So at least admit that. You have no direct knowledge of these people that you say you have complete faith in. You weren't alive when they were alive. How can you have complete faith in them? All you have is what people have told you about them. And are these people that told you about them, are they perfect beings? Were they there? Or are they simply repeating what they've heard over and over again and take it as true simply because it's been repeated? You know, a repeated lie can seem like the truth. On the other hand, the truth of another, or truth that is repeated, becomes a lie. So even repeating so-called truth is a lie, because it becomes a lie the minute you try to capture it with words, which is what you do when you try to repeat the truth of another. It doesn't even matter if Jesus and Buddha and all these people saw for themselves some form of truth. They may very well have. The minute they tried to tell it to people, everyone messed it up, right? Because words are imperfect, and they take those words and they misinterpret those words, and the words themselves are not truth. They try to go backwards from the words to the truth, and then they find that you can't. It's like a one-way street. Truth can speak, but the words that are spoken do not lead to truth. It's like a diode, you know. In electrical terminology, if you're familiar with that, current flows in one direction. It's like words, true words in some sense can flow from truth. But then because those words are incomplete, they're fragments, they're never complete, never. No words can describe what I'm feeling and experiencing right now, no finite number of words and no infinite number of words, because that's impossible. There's just no words, right? This is indescribable, ineffable. This moment that I'm in is indescribable. You have to be in this moment to experience this moment. So if that's true, how can anyone, religious figures or otherwise, somehow capture the truth that they may or may not have seen, that you have no idea if they even did, because you have no idea how to independently verify the veracity of what they're saying? Do you see the quagmire that you get into? That when you are in a belief system, there's so many questions. You don't know that what's written down is true, and then there are people who investigate that, and they will say it's true, but then their investigation is flawed, and how do you know that what they say is true? And then you can end up going down, you can get caught in this just weird, like, what are you trying to prove anyways? Why are you trying to prove it? When there's a direct path, right? Or not a path, but there is a direct way, independently, right? And that just means independent of the past, like not depending on anything that anyone's told you, anyone said. Just you are here and you are alive, presumably. And if that is true, examine life, examine what's happening, examine this idea of yourself. And this is why I keep coming back to this, because this is more powerful than any religious belief in yourself. It's more fundamental. What do you mean by yourself? What does that mean? When you say my brain, which may be a good way to go into it, and this whole detour started when I said my brain, which just slipped out, right? And I'm used to saying it that way. And it's okay to say that if there's an understanding of what that means. But when you don't understand what that means, you can take that wrong and say, there's a me, that is separate from the brain. Some call that a soul, right? And that concept is firmly established in many religious traditions. Again, though, a concept. All that is the idea that there is a separate me. There is something separate from your body, from your physical body, that we call the soul, that persists beyond your death, right? This is the idea, or at least the Christian idea. I don't pretend to know how it is in every other tradition, but this idea that there is some permanent you that does not change somehow, which is very strange, because every memory you have is a change, right? Is it accumulating memories? Is this me, this permanent me of yours, does it have memory or not have memory? Because these are questions to ask yourself, right? Because you take for granted when you use the word me or myself that you understand what that means. But do you understand? Go into it. Ask yourself questions. What do I mean by that? And then dig deeper, right? We talk about a soul. Okay. Sometimes I think that's where the conversation begins and ends. I have a soul that lasts forever. When I die, that soul goes to heaven or is reincarnated in some other thing, right? And that's the story you tell yourself, right? But is that the end of it? Do you not go into that a little deeper and ask yourself questions about, okay, well, wait a second. Okay, I'm saying there's this permanent thing. What is that thing contain my memories and the memories of every other? Presumably, then, if I was reincarnated, I would have the memories of everything that came before, as well as my own memories. Well, I don't remember any of that now, right? I'm not aware of any of prior memories. Some people claim that they do remember, right? So there you go. Some people may say, oh, some people do remember their past lives. Okay, so it's possible, I guess, right? Only because some people claim it, right? But it's not truth. I don't know any of these people personally, and I don't personally remember anything that happened prior to this life. So I can't personally say that that's true or not. I can't corroborate what anyone has said. And then the question arises, where are these memories stored? Because the brain appears to be our storehouse of memory. We kind of know now how memories are formed, neuronal connections form. We see a physical change in the brain, right, when memory occurs. And so science has helped us to understand that. I think people understood that even before science. But neuroscience has uncovered the connection between the physical brain and this idea we have of memory, the experience of memory. I mean, they open people's brains, they poke at it, people smell things that aren't there, so they know that the scent of a flower is stored in your brain, and if they trigger that part of the brain physically, you smell the flower again, right? And a lot of times that's triggered through our sensory input, but these things can be triggered externally, right? With an open brain and a stick, poking on it. So we know we can trigger memories. We can affect your mental perception by screwing around with the physical brain, which shows there is a connection between the brain and all these thoughts and memories that we have. That seems fairly indisputable at this point. I guess again, I'm taking someone's word for it there. I've not had my brain opened and poked around at. So even that, right, you could say is taking someone's word for it. And I want to be honest about that. That is true, right? I don't know. I don't have direct experience with it. So, but I'm not relying on that. I'm looking at my own mind and saying, I know, I can tell that these memories are being stored somehow in me. I can just see that, right? And I don't remember memories from any other life. I can imagine, right? But I don't, that again, I also understand I can imagine things. I can see things that aren't really there, right? The brain can do that too, can hallucinate. That's something I know that can happen. So I'm aware of all these things, right? In my own mind. But then it's like, but all of what I consider to be me, I believe is contained within this brain. These thoughts I have about me, the thoughts I have, right? That I am this separate being, that I am, and then I realize, well, me is a lot of memories, right? If someone says, who are you? You normally respond by giving your name, your profession, where you went to school, maybe your work background. These are all memories. What would you say if you didn't have those memories and someone asked, who are you? You'd come back blank. I don't know. I don't remember who I am. People that have amnesia have that experience, right? They don't know who they are because so much of who you think you are is your memories. So you can see that, right? Again, I'm not telling you anything you can't see for yourself. Don't take my word for it, but say what I consider myself to be is very much tied to my memories. So let's just say I remove all those memories. And then who are you without those memories? So if those memories are stored in your brain, and without those memories, who are you? Is that what persists in the soul? That emptiness? Because I think most people don't think that. They think that their memories go on, right? I remember if I leave this body and go somewhere else, whether to heaven or another organism or whatever, I take those memories with me somehow in some form that we can't imagine, some ethereal spiritual brain or something that takes those memories with us to the next existence. We think that, right? But do we really think that? Because I think if we go into it, I think we start questioning that and saying, I don't know, that sounds kind of extraordinary. And wouldn't that be true of everything then? Every plant or every other animal? Is it just true for humans or for dogs? Because they have memories too. So it brings up all sorts of problems, right? That you now have to address. If you really go into it, you'll start seeing all these holes in your ideas. And also, if you go to heaven, do you have a form? Or do you still have a body? And what age is that body? Is that body still when you were 20 or when you died? Is it the body when you died? Is it the 30-year-old version of you, the 50-year-old version, the 1-year-old version? You have some image, right, in your head of like, well, if I went to heaven, I'd be perfect or whatever. I would have no ailments. What age would that correspond to? Were you ever perfectly healthy? Were you ever... See, and you just start questioning things like this. Like what... Just by questioning, just by asking questions of what it is that you actually believe, no, you will see things you didn't see before, things you took for granted, things that no one has to tell you. This is your own investigation, right? The only thing is, if you stop investigating, you stop asking questions, now you're done, right? And you're happy. You want to go back and living in your secure bubble, that you've created for yourself. Why should you be afraid of asking questions? If it's the truth, questions shouldn't change it. No investigation should change. It's true, right? It's true, then no questions. So don't be afraid of the questions. Go into the questions, because they should only confirm what you believe, right? But if they start not confirming what you believe, now you have to say, well, then maybe what I believe is not 100% accurate. But then you got to say, well, then what is? So then your next thing would say, well, maybe not. I don't understand it all, but the basic idea is correct. But then you're just admitting that you believe in a flawed, imperfect image of reality, not truth itself. What is this path that you're going down? Like, what, you're betting all your cards on something uncertain? Why not bet all your cards on something that is true and certain, which is based in fact, what can be seen, what can be observed directly, not concepts and ideas that you have in your brain, but truth, right? So you say, well, if there is such a truth, right, then that truth is unchangeable, unshakable, not something that I would find to not be true if I investigated it. And some people consider their beliefs to be that truth, right? They just believe it's true, though. Because then you have to understand, what does it mean for something to be true? You can't just state that something's true. Truth is what is happening now, not what happened yesterday. We started off by saying this, right? We started off by saying truth is in this moment, here and now. That is the truth. Not 5 minutes ago, not 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, not the future, now. So you have to do away with all these concepts and ideas and say truth is not any set of ideas. Truth is not just, I believe in this other set of ideas is true. You start seeing what's not true are all these thoughts and ideas and concepts. It doesn't matter what they are. Doesn't matter what form they take, or what you call that bundle of concepts and ideas, what name you give that ideology or that religion or that political view or whatever it is. It's still creations of the mind, born from thoughts, which come from memories, which are imperfect and incomplete, fragmentary, not the truth. And then there's a falling away of all of it, right? Just an ending, there's no, my belief is better than your belief. It's all gone. Because once you see that truth, that all beliefs are based in constructs of the mind, which can be questioned, which can be challenged, which may or may not be true, even in a conventional sense of truth. I mean, truth cannot be broken, but then you realize that you take things to be true that are really not true. But then you have to understand what truth really is, and that's another thing to go into. What is really truth? Is it any belief system? Can you ever call a belief system true? Or are beliefs one thing and truth another? And I would say belief has no place where truth is concerned. Truth is facts. And you need to know what facts are and how they differ from beliefs and opinions. Do you know that? Or have you fooled yourself into believing you know that your opinions are truth or your beliefs are truth? Well, you can play that word game, but it doesn't change truth, right? You may believe what you want about truth, right? But truth is still there, being truth the whole time, not your version of truth, not what you take to be true. Your opinion about the truth doesn't change the truth. That's the other thing you need to do. Remove your arrogance from the problem. Because if you think you can just say something's true and make it true, that does not make it true, not by any means. So you have to understand truth is not something that can be communicated. It's not something that can be taught to another. It doesn't have. It is what you see, what you observe through your own senses, your own awareness. That is the only thing that is true. Nothing else. And direct perception, right? We can say hallucination, right? You say, well, how do I know I'm not hallucinating? Well, hallucination is thought, right? Hallucination is a layer on top of what you're directly observing. Hallucination is, I'm imagining that I'm seeing something, right? And it could probably be very real. But to be aware of that hallucination itself is to see that that is also a truth. That the mind can play games. The brain can sometimes see things that are not there, right? That are not real. That is another seeing of the truth, to see that in your own mind, that maybe these are hallucinations. Do you see that? Maybe everything I see is a hallucination. How do I know the difference between what I see and what I may hallucinate? Is there a way to know the difference? And does somebody have to tell me that? Or can I see that on my own? You can't rely on anyone to tell you what's real, what's true, what's a hallucination, what's not. You must be able to do this on your own. This brain that is in your skull has to, of its own accord, know how to see truth, and all of this on its own. It can't be something that anyone tells you. That's the scary part that no one wants to admit or acknowledge, because it erases everything that anyone's taught you previously. Then you're empty, right? If you got rid of everything everyone told, now you're empty. Holy mackerel, I'm empty. What's wrong with being empty? Emptiness is beautiful. An empty container can now contain anything, right? A full container can't contain anything. It's full. There's no room for the truth in a container filled with belief. So the beliefs all have to go. What everyone's told you, including your parents, priests, gurus, whoever, your favorite politician, your friend, whatever accumulated. Think of all you've accumulated over your entire life, all of that crust and just baggage. That is what's making you you right now. That is you. To get back to what is this me that I call, you will see it is all that. It is that conditioning that you have received from everybody, everything, from the moment you were born, has built up this image of you as separate from your brain. So that's what you have to, how do you get through that? How do you break through that image? By seeing truth. And it doesn't matter how much baggage you've accumulated and how long that process has gone on and how much you've accumulated. It can all end, because what do we say truth? Truth is always there, waiting, infinitely patient. Because it's not a human being, right? There's no impatience to truth. Truth is just is. It is there, waiting to be seen, waiting to be observed directly, infinitely patient. Not some supernatural entity, natural entity, right? A natural, whatever it is, right? It's not something you can name or describe. It's what you see when you open your eyes, for real, right? That is what truth is. It's not a concept or idea. It's not anything that I can explain, in any more than I can explain what I'm feeling or experiencing right now by walking through this beautiful park and just looking up now and seeing all the green and yellow and just the wind. It's cooling me off. I was a little hot, and now the wind is blowing on me. That wind is real. This field is true. The sun is true, right? The clouds in the sky are true. Like, that's an unshakable truth. And no one's going to tell me that it's not, right? And my senses are telling me. Right? I'm receiving this through my senses, which is the only way. There's no other way, right? There's nothing else. What comes in through our senses is all. The only way we can know truth directly is in that way. Right? And, it's very hard to do that because we're so used to the layers and layers and layers that we place on top of that sensory experience, and gets muddled in there, right? And remember, all of this, I try to remember, is all because I said my brain. That was the trigger for this whole conversation. And I know I often say, I come back to the same thing. I say the same thing, right? But it's important because I don't even know what we were talking about before that. It seemed less important than this, which is why we went this direction, because the importance of this is foundational, fundamental. You must see who you are. There's nothing else. We talked in the previous video about a disorderly mind cannot create an orderly society. And a disorderly mind is one in which this concept of me is still alive and well. right? To put it simply. And so what does that mean? We have to see that disorder. And, we kind of were cut off in the last video. We said we have a disorderly mind, and the disorderly mind cannot bring about order within itself, even, right? And it cannot bring about an orderly society. And then we are left with the question, which is very pertinent. Well, what can I do then? How does an orderly mind come about? That's a natural question. You should ask that question, right? And again, we're not taking anything on faith. We talked about that a while ago. This isn't about faith. It's about questioning. You should ask questions. All the questions that maybe you got your hand slapped for, in my case, maybe a few times in school, you ask too many questions, you get your hand slapped. No one's slapping anyone's hands here. We are investigating this. This is investigation. This is inquiry. And that is beautiful, that you are allowed to ask questions. So get over that. Because I think sometimes, especially, well, let's just say I was raised in the Catholic tradition that does not encourage asking questions. They say they do in certain regards, but they really don't want you asking too many questions, because it will come back to, you must have faith. At some point you'll ask a question, right? The Nicene Creed, right? Or the Nicene Council, right? Which came up with this mantra that gets repeated, the Nicene Creed, that says, this is what we believe. And then, there were other people that believed things at the time. This is also, go into this. Ask where the Nicene Creed came from. Why do we say these things in Mass and not even question it? We had a group of people came together and decided, because there were differing opinions about Jesus. Some thought Jesus was mortal, just like everyone else. Those people were shipped away. It was like, no, that is blasphemy to even question the divinity of Jesus and say he was a human being. There were plenty of people who said that. And why don't we even consider that today? Well, because the people that said that were, I guess I don't know exactly what, I sure hope they weren't put to death or anything. I know they were banned, they were shunned, they were, from what I hear, banished. Like, you weren't, there's a deep tradition in the people that ask questions get banished, right, in this tradition. And go check it out for yourself. Look up the Nicene Creed, which is fundamental to Catholicism. Find out where it came from. And it's something that's repeated, right, in Mass, and it's like to basically somehow pound the truth into your brain that as someone saw it. Thousands of years ago, somebody decided what truth was, and now they're pounding it into your head and saying, that is true. Why do you let yourself be subjected to that? Be free from that. Don't let anyone pound truth into your head. Don't let anyone tell you what's true. Question everything, just like the people at the time questioned. There were people that questioned then. They were silenced. That form of silence is not a good silence. People should question. You should doubt. You should doubt everything. Doubt everything I'm saying, right? Because no one wants to take. That's what we're saying here. Is be free, right? To be free is to be free of the bondage of your conditioning. That's what we mean by free. This is not a physical freedom, like not in jail. Well, I'm already free. I'm living in a free country. Free to do what you want, which is how we look at freedom here. That's not the freedom we're talking about. We're talking about a free mind. A mind, you can live in a free society, so-called free, right? The United States of America, which has political freedom, in quotes, right? People would debate that. But your mind can still be in bondage to your beliefs, in bondage to your conditioning. Whatever you were taught while you were growing up, whatever people told you to believe was true, you have to let all that go. Let it go, right? And no one tells you what the truth is. This is what you're not used to. You're like, well, someone needs to tell me what's true. No one needs to tell you what's true. No one. I'm not telling you. I'm telling you there is truth beyond what you've been taught. There is truth. That is all I'm telling you. And I've caught a glimmer of it. I can't claim to know truth anymore. I don't know truth. Truth isn't something that can be known. See, there's the arrogance too. No one can know truth. So no, I don't know truth. Of course I don't, because I can't capture it with my limited, finite mind. That's also something that no one else is going to want to tell you, right? They're going to say, no, I know the truth. I know it. Believe me, I'll tell you the truth. Don't believe them. Don't believe anyone that says they know the truth, because this is where you get beyond it by understanding that all knowledge is limited. All people are limited. There is no seeing the truth in that way. No one's going to teach it to you. No one's going to tell you how to see it. I'm not telling you how to see it. I'm simply saying, get rid of what's holding you back from seeing truth. That's different. In other words, drop all the baggage. Drop what's been holding you back. You've believed things all these years. Why not just let that go? Let it go and see what happens, right? Why be afraid of that? Why be afraid to drop? You know, that's what's holding you back. Fear. You know it is. Because you think, God, well then I'll go to hell. Right? Or, you know, the minute I say I doubt anything, right? They told me that I'll go to hell the minute I doubt anything. Do it anyways. See what happens. See if you go to hell. Right? Why not? Roll the dice. Because what you know for sure right now is you're in prison. You are in a prison. And think about when people are in a prison, they just want to break out of that prison. They don't even know what's going to happen when they break out of the prison. They might fall off a cliff. But they just want freedom, right? You know, it's like every movie I've ever... Shawshank Redemption, by the way, great movie. By what people don't even realize, by Stephen King. It's a good book, too. So for those, you know, go read it, right? And a lot of that is, and there's a prison break, right? But it's because people want to be free at any cost. Even your life, right? Sometimes prisoners will say, I will risk being shot, killed, just to taste freedom, right? Even in the revolution, right? I can't remember, give me liberty or give me death, right? Liberty is freedom. Give me freedom. Or I don't even want to be alive living in this world. So that's okay, right? Like, it's okay even if you lose your life because of freedom, because what is a life worth living in prison? In not freedom? Is that a life you want to live? Is that how you want to live your life? In bondage? Behind the bars of a prison of your own making. And it is of your own making. Others have helped you, have handed you the bricks and the mortar and told you to build this prison around your mind, and you have done so. And you know, there's a certain security to being in that prison, right? The outside world is kept out. All the dangers of that outside world. I can live in a tiny little cell, and I'm safe in that cell, right? I mean, I'm safe. I get my 3 meals a day, 3 hots in a cot, how they say it, or whatever. I get to go in the yard every once in a while and lift weights or play basketball. That's my life, and I like it. Don't mess with it. All I'm saying is, if you like that limited existence, you like living in that tiny little circle, go ahead and live it. But it's like looking out the window of your jail cell and seeing that there's a whole something else out there that you don't even know, that you have to leave the prison to even find out what it is. You can never see it while you're in the prison, and no one can describe it. It's just like there is freedom, right, out there, freedom. And not freedom from anything, just freedom. Like, you're free out there, right? No one's going to tell you what to do, what to believe. And then the next thing is you can figure out for yourself, right? And this is where it's not like, you're not rejecting anything, right? To be free is not to reject. Because if you reject something, you're still bound. Because in order to reject, you still have to have that thing that you're rejecting. You get rid of that too. When you get rid of that, you're done with rejection. You're not rejecting anything. You're not accepting anything. You're just done. You just want to be outside the walls of the prison. Now, when you're outside the bounds of the prison, you can understand truth yourself, on your own. No one tell you, what to believe. You do it on your own way, but you have to be careful, because in saying your own way, yourself, right, I'm coming back to this. The first thing you need to know then is who you are. So the first question after you break out of prison is, okay, I'm out, who am I? Now you're free to go into that question. You were not free before. People told you who you were. Now you're saying, I don't know who I am. I'm gonna drop all these stories that people have told me about who I am, and I'm just going to now find out, who am I really, without anyone telling me who I am. Go back to your childhood. I mean, people have been telling you who you are since the moment you were born. You don't even remember how far back that goes. That's how far back it goes. So get rid of that. So it's like a reversing time, right? Going back to a time before all this began, before all the conditioning started, and just like turning back the clock. And remember, time is not, you can do that, right? And just turn it back to a time before you were told, before other people told you who you were, and say, I am now ready to find out who I am on my own. Or I'm going to let the universe tell me who I am. I'm going to let the truth tell me, because the truth is who I am. That truth is what I observe, not what someone tells me. I'm out here walking right now in the fields. That's true. That truth is who I am. No one can take that away from you, right? Because it's not a thing. It's not a transitory thing anymore, right? It is not the truth is there, whether I think about it or not, whether I regard it or not. So I have to open my eyes to let it in, to let the light in, right? But that light is going to come in of its own accord, its own way. I'm not going to determine what I see, right? It's like you're not afraid anymore to see what's there. It could be nothing, it could be everything. You're not afraid, but you know that is what is true, and you are open to it now. Whereas before you were closed, behind closed walls, and you couldn't see it. So this is, and there's a beauty, right? There's a beauty to this. Like, there's a joy, the joy of freedom, and it's not what comes next. It's just to be free, right? It's like the slaves, right? In the United States, the slaves, when they were free, were just rejoicing their freedom. It wasn't even freedom from, it was from bondage, but like, it was just, what does it mean to be free? And free also from the hate of your captors. Because as long as you have that hate, right, you're still tied to that. To just let all that go, to be free from all bondage, including the bondage of hate. And the bondage of, to hate your captors, to hate the people who bound you. Because, you don't want to hate anybody. And you don't want to hate your parents for conditioning you, and you don't want to hate your teachers. They're conditioned too. There's no hate here. There's no one to blame. Right? This is the other thing. There's no one to blame for you being in this prison, because they don't know any better themselves. Right? They know not what they do. Right? When Jesus was dying on the cross, he's like, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And it's the same thing, which is, there is no one to blame. So it's not about, my parents did this, and my teachers did this, and I wish I wouldn't, wish they wouldn't have done all that to me. You're going down the wrong way when you head in that direction. It's not about blame. You have to have compassion for these people. These people are also in darkness, right? They also have not seen truth. They are conditioned. So they are conditioned just like you were conditioned. No difference. Right? So they need to break through their conditioning as much as you do. Some may not be alive anymore. It's too late. Right? But while you're alive, can we break through that conditioning? And it's like being out in this open field. Right? Like right now, it's just, I don't know where I am, or it doesn't matter to me where I am. I'm in the open. I'm out here in the field. No one place out here feels any better to me than any other place. It all feels It's just a sense of freedom, right? It doesn't matter where I'm at in this state. In this state, I am just free. And that's why, to me, like, I can wander around here. I can be left, right, up, down, front, back. It doesn't matter. I don't care where I'm at. I just know I am free. And this is where, don't be afraid of what freedom brings, right? Freedom, you know, it may not, who knows what the outcome of freedom is? It doesn't matter. To be free in and of itself is joyous. It is joy, right? And there's a joy to being free, even if you lose your own life, right? I mean, slaves, would probably run away knowing their life is in danger. They were willing to risk it all. And even if they were killed, right? An unfortunate, very unfortunate outcome, but it was worth it to them because they were free the minute they left. No one could, their mind was free. They were no longer bound, right? Because your mind is what's bound. That's what really keeps you from being free. And when you're free, then you're not blaming anyone anymore. You are just like, now you're living, right? Freedom is living. Until you're free, you're not living. And this goes back to what we said at the start, which is, what is life? And why worry about what comes when you die, when you don't even know what it means to live? And life, what it means to live, is to live freely. To be free to receive what life is sending you, not what other people are sending you, right? To be open to every moment, what life brings you in that moment, not what you expect it to bring you. I don't know what, I'm walking through the forest, I don't know what I'm going to encounter. I can encounter a bear, or a snake, or a rabbit, or a deer. I don't know what's going to happen. And every day I step out and I come for the walk and I look forward to it because I know it's freedom. And freedom may have danger in it. There's no doubt that there could be danger, but it doesn't matter. It's still joyous because it's free, because it's freedom. So to have a free mind is not to feel safe in that freedom. There is a security though, because you're not worried about it anymore. You're not worried about being safe. Because when you're worried about being safe, you want to stay in your prison cell. You want to avoid all danger outside your prison cell. And so you keep yourself in bondage out of a fear or a desire for safety, a fear of insecurity. Be insecure. What's wrong with it? Be unsafe. What's wrong with it? Again, it goes back to who you are. If you think you're a permanent thing that's going to last forever, you have a desire to protect it. If you realize you're temporary, you will end. Then you're not worried about ending anymore. You may end now, you may end 10 minutes from now, you may end a year from now, but think of the joy in not worrying about that anymore. Not caring when you end, not worrying about when you end. And when you stop the worrying about when you're going to end, now you really can live. Because now you're not worrying about dying, you're just living, right? Which is what you should be doing to begin with, and not worrying about death. And it's no good to say, don't worry about death, right? This doesn't help many people because they will just continue worrying about death. It's like saying, don't think of an elephant. Well, the minute I say that, you thought of an elephant. That's the way the brain works. So it's not about that. It's accepting that the brain is going to do what the brain is going to do. Seeing, not accepting. Seeing that the brain does that. And it's just natural for the brain to do that. It's natural to worry. It's natural to think about ending and all that. But just see that and see the truth of it all. See who you are. Right? Again, if you see who you are, then what's ending? What are you worried about ending? Because you aren't anything permanent anyways. There's nothing to end. There you go. But me saying it isn't going to help at all. There's nothing to end. There's no me. There's no permanent me that's going to end. There's a temporary me. There is a temporary me. It is this bundle of memories in this brain that believes it's an independent entity, that may believe it continues even beyond this body. That's okay. That's what the brain does. Thinks that. than just seeing that for what it is, just thoughts about you, thoughts of who you are, not who you really are. So you have to see and be aware of who you really are that goes beyond the thoughts of who you are. Because those thoughts, like we always said, they're not real. They're fragmentary, they're incomplete. So don't even let the brain think what it wants to think. It's going to think, right? Thinkers are going to think. Brains are going to think. That's what they do. It's okay. Don't take those thoughts as reality. Don't take those thoughts as truth. That's all. See that those thoughts are not truth. And then it doesn't matter anymore what the brain thinks about itself, about you, about anything else. It's like it loses its power because it can think all at once. You just stop taking it seriously, right? You see it for what it is, just thoughts. Those thoughts aren't tangible things. Those thoughts aren't real. Those thoughts are not my direct experience of what I'm seeing. What I see and experience and feel are an entirely different thing than those thoughts. Don't get lost in those thoughts. See, and this is the beauty of life, right? The beauty of living is to not be lost in your thoughts, to not allow the past to interfere with what's happening now, to be aware of what's happening now, not think about the past, not think about the future. And that can't happen as long as you have this idea of yourself, right? Because as long as you hold on to this idea you have about you, must be doing too much talking, you will continue to think, and you will continue to have those thoughts. So let's see where we're at here. Well, we're an hour and a half. I guess that's what do we got? Battery life. Let me check this out. Oh, we're at 11%. Yeah, it's not going to go much further than this. This is where I cut it off yesterday. So I will just say I am going to continue walking, right? I'm going to continue enjoying this day. It has now turned into a sunny day. We have come out of the doom and gloom and into the light, maybe in more ways than one, both literally and figuratively. And this day has a lot to offer still. And I am going to observe it, observe what this day brings. And I hope that you have a good day as well. And get outside, right? Get out of the head, get out of the thoughts, and see if you can figure out what's true for yourself, right? Can you see truth? And how do you see truth? And without anyone telling you, just get out, right? Okay, so I will say until next time, we will call it a day, and I don't think I'm likely to make another video today. I think this will be it. The rest of the day, I think I want to, walk in silence, and just observe, and that's it. Okay, until next time.